The computer, an overview. Before we can delve into the complexities of a computer, I want to go over all the parts that make a computer. And when I was looking for a way to provide a metaphor to those who might not be as familiar with computers, I came across this 1613 definition in the Oxford English Dictionary that said, a computer is a person who makes calculations or computations. Now, obviously, there weren't any machines, there wasn't even electricity at this point, so a person had to do all the calculating. And then I saw the next definition from 1869, a device or machine for performing facilitating calculations, and then the 1946 definition, which, well, is a lot more complex. And I thought, using a person as a metaphor to talk about a computer is actually really powerful. Because in many ways, they're really similar. And so what I want to do is go through your body, and I'd like to compare it to a computer. So the first thing your body has, as you probably know, is skin and bones, a structure. Now this structure provides a framework in which everything else fits. All your organs fit in certain spots. Your legs are on the bottom, your feet below that. Your arms are at the top, your head above that, and it's all perfectly weighted in order to support all of this. Now the other thing your body, your skin and bones do, is they protect everything on the inside from everything on the outside. So for instance, when someone hits you, or when you fall, your heart doesn't fall out of your body, right? It's held in by your rib cage and then your skin and your muscles. And so your skin and bones provides protection from all of those elements. And of course, this body of yours has been perfectly designed to support all of these different parts. Now this, your skin and bones, is very much like a computer chassis, which is also called the case, or the structure. And as you can see in this image I pulled up here, you have several things that make a chassis a chassis. For instance, you have lots of vents because computers get very hot. And so this thing is perfectly created to allow for airflow. There's also lots of spots for hard drives, like over here. And as you can see from all these locks down here, this thing protects all of these internal components from the outside. You also have a spinal cord. Your spinal cord is what everything plugs into, for lack of a better word. And it's really what allows your body to talk to all the different parts of your body. So when my hand moves, that's my brain talking through my spinal cord to my hand. It allows all these different body parts as well to talk with my brain, which controls everything. So not just can my body, and not just can my brain talk to my hand actually talks to my body. My eyes talk to my brain. Everything talks to each other. I sing the body electric, is what Whitman said. And this spinal cord is very much like, in computers, what we call a motherboard, or a system board. And this system board allows you to plug in everything. You have expansion slots, which we'll talk about, and RAM slots here, and spots to plug in all your storage devices, and all sorts of little chips that allow everything to talk to one another. And so, in many ways, your spinal cord is very much like this motherboard. You also have a brain. And your brain, as you probably know, is extremely important because it processes all of the incoming and outgoing information from your body. So when your eyes see something, that goes to your brain and that processes it. And then your brain can spit something out through your mouth. It's also extremely complex, and it's very fast. I mean, our brain works so fast that we move, we breathe, we walk without even having to think about it because our brain is processing at that high of a speed. Finally, without it, we can survive, we can live, but we're basically a vegetable. We're not aware of anything. We can't process new information. And so our brains are very much like, in computers, what are called CPUs, or the Central Processing Unit. And this Central Processing Unit basically is what makes the computer run. It does all of the processing, all of the information that goes through that motherboard, through that spinal cord. It goes to the central processing unit, and that CPU processes this information and sends it back to all the different pieces. Now, you also have two different types of memory in your brain. The first type, short-term memory, is limited in what it can hold. A lot of people think we can hold about 4 to 7 things in our short-term memory at any one time, and that's because our short-term memory is what we use to work on a project or work on something. It's what we're keeping in our head at any one moment. And that's what allows us to do our work. It only runs because of this when we're awake or when we're aware. We're not keeping things in our short-term memory when we're sleeping. It kind of goes to sleep as well. And this is similar to, in a computer, what's called RAM, or Random Access Memory. And this random access memory, this RAM, it's what allows us to work on things. It's like our desktop, which we can put files on and work on them during the day, just like our short-term memory. But it's limited in how much information it can hold. Because we also have a different type of memory, long-term memory. Now, long-term memory holds far more information than our short-term memory because we're not using it every time we're working. We access deep information in there that we can store for later use. So it's a lot bigger because of this, but we also need the short-term memory, right? We need that random access memory in order to work with this long-term memory. And some think that the information in our long-term memory remains there always. Your long-term memory can store information for years and years, and that's where it files stuff away, like your file storage cabinet. And this is just like what we call in computer storage. These are your hard drives, or your floppy drives, or your optical drives. These are things that store information for later use that we can bring into our short-term, bring into our random access memory, and then we can do something with it. Now, we also have a stomach GI tract, right? And our stomach provides us with fuel. This is what allows us to keep running. It feeds all of these internal processes, our brain, our muscles, our heart. These all require constant fuel, and they require resources. And that's what our stomach provides. And without it, we will eventually die. You can go, a few days without food, even longer without water, but at a certain point, unless you're feeding your body, unless you're getting fuel, you can't survive. And just like with anything with electricity, this is our power supply. This is what fuels every single part of this electronic computer. We also have senses, the 5 senses that most people know: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. And these are how you receive information from the outside world, right? You use your senses to look around you, to hear things, to taste something. And each of these senses can pick up a different type of information. They're tuned to specific things. My eyes are tuned to looking, my ears for hearing, and I use them for different things. And this gives our information, our CPU, something to process, something to take and chew on, no pun intended. And this is what we call input devices, like what I have here, like a keyboard or a mouse, for instance, are our 2 most basic input devices, because they allow us to input stuff into our computer, into the CPU, into the hard drive. And this is very different from speech and movement, right? These are the outputs. This is what lets us communicate to the world and people around us. And I can use my mouth to taste something, but I can also use my mouth to speak, to use language, to reach out. I can use a gesture to explain something. And these allow us to convert our thoughts, our internal, into something external, into our actions. This is also what permits other people to take our ideas and compute them themselves. So this really allows for communication. Someone else's input system, their ability to hear or see me, and my ability to send a message. And in computers, this is what we call an output device. And these are things like printers, or the most necessary output device, a display, so that we can see what's going on in the computer. Finally, we have this whole nature versus nurture debate, right? We have our bodies, we have our brains, but unless there's something telling our brains how to use all of this stuff, it's pretty pointless, right? This nature versus nurture, what we learn, this is our context. This is how we embrace the world. It provides us with language to go with our voice, meanings to go along with our gestures. And it's a guide for dealing with the world around us. And in computers, this is what software does. It provides a translator from the CPU, from the brain, to the user, to allow me to be able to type something into the computer, and the computer knows exactly what I'm saying. Now that's like us learning. That's like our instinct. That's a baby chicken pecking through the egg when it first is born. So what we're going to do in this A+ class is talk about all of these different pieces. Our output devices, input devices, power supplies, storage devices, memory, CPUs, our brains, our motherboards, our system boards, and the chassis. And once we understand all of these pieces, then we'll have a better sense for how a computer operates, and we'll have a better sense for not only how to fix them, but how to connect each computer to the other. So without further ado, let's get into talking about each one of these individual pieces.